Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Barstool Baseball Show. It's Wednesday. It's Carl, and as always, I'm joined by Chris Klemmer. You're in New York. There's some commotion outside the office as we record this. What's going on?
I don't know. Who knows? Chaos is always here. It's wacky here at Barstool. What's next?
It's the craziest place, man. You never know what you're going to get. Let's start with this. This show is starting to become more important, these Wednesday shows, as we get into the playoffs. 2 weeks ago, we went deep dive on the entire 12-team structure. Really spent a lot of time on like the format and the bigger, broader narratives as the season comes to a close. Last Wednesday, we talked to Vinny Pasquantino from the Kansas City Royals. We're coming back today because we want to kind of tighten up the conversation we had 2 weeks ago. There's clear division winners, but there's a couple spots for the MLB playoff picture that are very much in play that we want to get into those spots and the teams that are competing for those spots. Your thoughts as we begin the show?
Yeah, let's talk about who's in and who's out.
You really simpled it down last night when we were doing pregame stuff because you were like, I just want to talk about who has a chance to get in there, who doesn't. So I guess for purposes to start, we should say the Braves, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Twins all have their hands wrapped around the division. There's two divisions that are up for grabs. Let's start the American League. Let's go to the American League East. The Rays and the Orioles played an amazing series this weekend, going 2-2. We talked about it on the Power Ranking show on Monday. I also just take a step back. How many games out are the Rays right now at the time of recording?
Yeah, so Rays are 2.5 back, but the bigger number probably is 3 in the loss column. I don't know. The Rays have 11 games left. They got to make up, 3 games here on the Orioles who have 12 games left. So in theory, that's one more game the Orioles could lose. Orioles are fighting nasty, though. I mean, they played a game on Monday night against the Astros. Felt like a playoff game. I didn't watch as much of it as I would have liked, flipping between all the football games and everything else. But like the parts I did see and just kind of reading between the lines here, that was a game with a lot of intensity, and the Orioles came out on top. Those are the kind of games where you're coming down the stretch here, 2 weeks left. You win those kind of games, that's huge victory against a good team. I know, the Astros are fighting for something right now. So I don't know. I think we're starting to get to the point where it just might be too much for the Rays to overcome.
How about John Means versus Justin Verlander last night? John Means, I think it was the second start of the season.
Yep.
And that's a name never gets talked about this year on the Power Ranking panel. We talk about the Orioles. Bradish, Klemmer, Grayson. John Means just sneaks in last night again. Orioles battled back late to win the game. But John Means pitches on the road against Justin Verlander, and the Orioles win a game. If you're an Orioles fan, you have to feel so fucking good. Let's say you said 11 games left?
Yeah.
2.5, 3 out.
Means went 5 innings, gave up 1 run. You wonder how they're going to use him. We're talking about it a little on Pick Central, and maybe I was wrong here, but I was thinking maybe he might be like that middle relief guy. Maybe he comes in the 6th, 5th, or 6th. But when you consider the Orioles pitching staff, Bradish will pitch game 1, Grayson pitches game 2. There isn't a clear number 3 guy, Dean Klemmer, Kyle Gibson. If you have Johnny Means pitching like he did yesterday, maybe he's that 3rd starter.
Would you throw him in 2? Would you bump him ahead of Grayson?
No.
I wouldn't put him in the bullpen because I don't want to deal with any injury issues.
I know.
I want to give him all the time to prepare him mentally and stuff. But honestly, it just goes 5 innings, 1 run, on the road in the Astros, complete playoff appearance. It could be a first-round playoff wildcard matchup if the Rays and whatever. This could be something we see very quickly. Means goes out and delivers. He's done it for this organization historically. If you had to pick a guy at the start of the season, we're like, this guy dragged his balls for the Orioles. There's only one guy in that rotation that has dragged his balls for that club, and it's John Means. So to see him pitch last night, it gives me a lot of confidence going to the playoffs if they decided to bump him in at the very least a 3 spot. But my question for you is there enough to go 2 and then have Grayson pitch the 3rd game because then that gives him a little less pressure, or is it more pressure because they could be down 0-2?
I think it's pressure either way. It's the playoffs. The good thing, though, is let's say the Orioles win the division. So that will actually give them 3-4 days off, and they can kind of align that rotation for how they want. And whoever they play in that next week, their rotation is going to be all fucked up because they, in theory, just got out of a big series. So the Orioles pitching, while I am concerned about it, if they can win the East, which I think they will, John Means gives them this extra weapon. That weakness suddenly isn't as palpable as I thought it was 2 weeks ago.
John Means is so much better than Jack Flaherty.
Oh, But
We talk about the Orioles not getting talent in the trade deadline.
Flaherty,
maybe we overlooked John Means coming back. Maybe we just completely shit on the fact that John Means would be ready for the post.
John Means isn't Justin Verlander. He's John Means, which is fine. He's good. I mean, he's a nice pitcher. He's a nice rotation depth, which is what we were talking about the whole season with the Orioles. We felt like they don't have that. Now, they do have Kyle Gibson. They do have Dean Klemmer. Those guys aren't guys I would be super excited about starting a playoff game, or I wouldn't be excited. I should be pretty devastated if they were starting playoff games for my team. But Jack Flaherty, the way he's pitched, he's not even going to be on the postseason roster. I mean, he's been atrocious. So, but having a guy like Gibson or Kramer come out of the bullpen, or if they get bombed one game, have them kind of just like not so you don't burn your bullpen through. Those are great guys to have. So if John Means can be just the John Means we saw in the past and pitch like he did yesterday, that Orioles rotation got a huge bump.
It's the game against the Astros, and it's the Sunday game against the Rays that makes me confidently say the Orioles are going to win the East. They're going to be the 1 seed in the American League. There is a little tension here as we close out the season. The Rays can catch them, as we've talked about. Would you rather be 5 games back at the start of September or 2 games back right now, or 2.5 games back right now?
I'd rather have more time. I'd rather be 5 back. There's just not enough time. There's just no time right now. Now, one thing that's against the Orioles here is that they're playing the Astros for 2 more. The Astros are good. And then they have the Guardians to finish out the week. The Guardians are pretty mid. The Rays, though, have the Angels, they're a walking corpse. They are the worst team in baseball over the last few weeks here. So it's very important the Orioles kind of take care of business and try to win as many games, because the Rays, that would kind of open the door a little bit. The Orioles get knocked around by the Guardians. If they let their guard up, but if they let anything kind of go by there, then the Rays could stay. The Rays are good enough. Rays have 92 wins. This is not like they're pretty fucking good too. So you have 2 teams really fighting here. I don't know. I do think the Orioles win though. I just think there's just not enough time.
All right. So if I have this correctly, who do the Rays have over the next couple games?
Yes, they have the Angels right now, and then they play the Blue Jays. So, that's pretty tough too. So that could be, Orioles have the Guardians, mid-average team. Rays don't have an easy shake either. They got to play the Blue Jays. So I just don't think the Rays have enough time.
And I don't blame you. I don't think anybody should blame you for that. The Rays played spectacular baseball. They had that dip in the second half, and it's not something related to Wander Franco. It was very much just a bulk of the 162 season, smack dab in the middle. They were outstanding for the first third of it. The second third of it, they were dormant. Like, they just weren't playing good baseball. I'm sure there's more reasons to come out of that from the clubhouse, but national perspective, guys, I don't give a fuck about Tampa baseball. Like, just looking at it, they're 2 completely different teams. Now in the third phase of the season, the last 2 months, they've been a completely different team than they were through June and July. So I don't even know how to peg the Rays at all. I had no clue how to peg them.
I mean, they're on pace to win 97, 98 games. This is by no means a failed season. Like, by any rights, they should win the division. When you win 97, 98 games, you absolutely should have a division crown. So they're getting kind of fucked here. But luckily, it's not like it was in 1978, right, when the Red Sox won 99 games and didn't make the playoffs. So at least they're going to be able to go in there. Or the Giants in 93. They won 102 games and didn't make the playoffs. So at least the Rays do have a chance here to go in and stay alive.
Do you have a reference before 93, or do I have to go back 30 fucking years to relate?
I gave you the 78 Red Sox and 93.
You want me to go back 55 years now?
You can if you want to go to 51. The 51.
Do you have anything in the last decade that's even remotely fresh?
Well, no, because the rules change. I'm talking about pre-wild card.
Great teams to miss the playoffs last 15 years. Great teams. Sorry, buddy.
Who am I forgetting? Who are you?
I don't know. I didn't know if you had anybody other than.
I mean, it's not like
93.
It's not. Well, I talk about 93. That's what kind of changed. That was also spearheaded kind of the wild card movement, was because the Giants got so screwed. First year, Barry Bonds, they go in there, won 102 games, but Fred McGriff and the Braves went red hot. So you don't really see it as much now with the wild card, and now we have multiple wild cards. So,
did you say the word is screwed?
Screwed?
I thought you said screwed. I thought that was an English variation. I thought that was like a Charles Dickens fancy way of saying the team got fucked. You just said old-fashioned screwed.
I'm old and I'm not fancy.
Okay, so quite frankly, it's Orioles 1, it's Rays 4 seed in the American League play.
I think so.
even if they win 97 games and they're that much better than the Twins, that's the way the format shakes up. That's the first spot kind of in question in limbo is the AL East, and then the implications that has. The Orioles are the 1 seed, then that means the Rays would be the 4 seed. That means the Rays would host a wild card on the first weekend. And that means the winner of that series would then travel to Baltimore for a 5-game ALDS. I mean, for a traditional division series. And of course, alternatively, it could be flip-flopped. If the Rays take the AL East, then the Orioles go to the 4 seed. So there's not a lot of as we get to the National League later, we'll see this team could jump this team in the wild card. It's fairly certain whoever loses the AL East will be the first wild card team.
Correct. It is certain.
Way more certain than the Phillies being, at the time of recording, the first wild card team out of the National League. Now, the other 2 spots in the American League that are up for grabs, certainly not the Central, is the West, and then the West interplay. I guess there's 3 spots on the last 2 wild card spots. So we have 4 teams chasing these 3 playoff spots. So there's 3 teams, obviously AL West: Mariners, Astros, Rangers, and they're all competing for the division title.
Yep.
Whoever misses out will get at least 1 spot in the wild card. The Blue Jays, who get no respect from anyone from Barstool, and rightfully so, because they just lose in a horrific fashion. So if we go out and just look at the American League West, I'm very confident in the Astros, even though they lost that game last night. I saw Jose Altuve double-A. I see him get on second base, looks in the dugout, does the tap, does the fucking hand signals, and I'm like, it could be 2018, it could be 2023, it could be 2021, it could be any time over the last 7 years. The Astros just feel as dominant as they've been historically. So any trepidation to that? You think the Rangers are hot? You think the Mariners are going to?
So, I mean, once again, it goes back to time. The Orioles do have a lead. They have a 1.5 lead. Only 1 in the loss column over the Mariners, Rangers, who are tied. Now, here's where, to your point about the Astros being dominant, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like this is a different Astros team. This team is struggling to win 90 games this year. So I have a hard time kind of really jumping on board as calling them dominant, especially after the season they had last year. But here's where I do like the Orioles. They have 3 games against the Royals. They have 2 here against the Orioles, which are tough. Obviously, we saw what happened on Monday. Then a day off, and 3 against the Royals at home. So they got to sweep that series, which they should be able to do, I would think. And then you have 3 against the Mariners in Seattle and 3 against the Diamondbacks. I think the Royals series, especially when you consider the Astros already have a 1.5 lead, that could be enough to take care of business. Obviously, you still have that Mariners series coming up. But at that point, then maybe all you need to do is win 1 of those 3 games, and then you might be in okay shape. So I do like the Astros to win the West, but, I mean, that could change. Even by the time we record this, I mean, the Orioles are good, man. The Orioles beat the Astros, and either the Mariners or Rangers win tonight. That becomes a half-game lead.
So let's just go back to your baseball, historically, and expertise. Are there seasons that jump to mind where you think, man, I know that there's more playoff spots, which increases the competitiveness for those spots. But are there individual seasons and teams and competitions that jump out to you that you can compare this to? Say, man, I can't remember the last time, the AL West has such implications on the playoff scenarios. And as we go through the National League too, there's so many teams at large here.
I mean, I go back to initially just the 2011 Red Sox that choked the fried chicken and beer team that had a huge lead September 1, but completely blew it, and the Rays caught them. But that was an interesting division because the Yankees were good that year too, or at least were decent that year. So you had a lot going on with those teams but the Rays catching them on that last day. I remember the Red Sox played the Orioles, and the Orioles were horrible that year, and the Orioles beat the Red Sox and knocked them out of the playoffs entirely, even though they had a big division lead. So, yeah, I mean, the AL East has always had those teams, right? You got the Yankees and Red Sox typically. You got the Blue Jays in the mix. I think more than any division, they've kind of had a stranglehold the last 30 years, more or less, on being the best division in baseball. Now, the most competitive division in baseball, I think one of the ones I've ever seen is this AL West. We have 3 teams. 1.5 separates all 3 of them. And the cool thing is one of those teams potentially could not make the playoffs. So it's like this musical chairs. And you got, 4 teams kind of circling. You only got 3 chairs there, and someone's going to miss out. And whichever one does, it does kind of suck because all of these teams are good. None of these teams are shabby. In the National League wild card, just some shabby teams. I don't feel like this is the case here in the AL. I feel like the Rangers, Mariners, Astros, and Blue Jays all deserve a chance to be in the playoffs, and one of them won't be there.
I like the heartbreak at the end of the season. I do like that there's teams where it's like, hey, man, you did your best. Like, one of these teams is going to have to go home sad. The manager's going to be, his job up for grabs.
Yeah, potentially. Depends on which team. I mean, Bochy's safe. Dusty Baker might not be safe. I think Scott Service is safe. I don't know about John Schneider. They missed the playoffs. I don't know.
If they miss the playoffs, then they need to replace John Schneider.
I agree.
Outsider. Blue Jays fans may feel differently. They like the fact he traveled to Seattle to throw BP to Vlad Guerrero during the home run derby. Outsider, there's no way you can manage that roster and not if you miss the playoffs with so many of these guys in the prime. You're getting a fucking world-class season for Matt Chapman at third base. One season to call out the 2015 NL Central. The Cardinals won 100 games. Pirates won 98 games. The Cubs won 97 games. The Cubs and the Pirates played each other in a one-game playoff. Arrieta obviously pitched complete game shutout. That was a fucking good division. But
that's a great
across
division. Baseball,
we're seeing a couple very good divisions this year. The AL East, the AL West. The Braves have run away with it, with the National League East. But let's stay West for a second. So if we like the Astros, and I agree with you, the Astros clear division. Maybe not clear division, but to me, it's a clear favorite right now. Are you more comfortable in the Rangers or the Mariners making the wild card? And again, both could make it, but if you had to pick one to lose out while the Blue Jays slide in, so where are you ranking? I guess the AL.
If I had to pick one, I would say I just don't trust the way the Rangers have been playing. That pitching staff has been their strength all season. It's kind of deteriorating in front of our eyes. Now their schedule is a little unusual. Every schedule is unusual, I guess, at this point. We got 2 against the Red Sox, day off. And then 6 of the last 10 games are against the Mariners. Excuse me, 7 of the last 10 games are against the Mariners. So that's almost like a playoff series. Right. Isn't that wild? They got 3 in Texas. Then they play 3 against the Angels in LA, which they gotta, you have to sweep that series at that point. And then you have 4 against the Mariners. So, that sandwich, if you will, that Oreo cookie, the Angels being the cream filling, that's fine. You gotta enjoy that. But those cookies on each side could be tough to digest.
Man, what a finish. 7 of the last 10 games for Texas against the Seattle Mariners, but the same thing for Seattle, right?
It's even crazier for Seattle. Let me pull them up for a second, because they have the wildest schedule of them all. Or at least in my opinion, the most competitive and the most interesting. Like if you had to pick only one team that I could watch for the rest of these 2 weeks, it would be the Mariners, because the implications for each game is paramount every game. So they have 2 against the A's. Obviously, they need to win those games. The A's are horrible. Day off. And then this is it. Ready? 3 against the Rangers in Texas. 3 at home against the Astros. And then 4 against the Rangers in Seattle. So those last 10 games, every single game matters. Every single game counts. For that reason, I like the Mariners here, because I feel like they can take care of business like on their own. Like they control every team controlling their own destiny with it being this close. But I feel like the Mariners, with that schedule, they could really do business. Having said that, though, if they get their asses kicked around, they lose 5 of 7. They go on a rough skid here. They're fucked. They're cooked. They're out. Not only out of the wild, but they're out of the West. They're out of everything.
Yeah, they fuck up this A's series if they drop these 2 games to the A's.
Well, in fairness, they did win the first game 5-0, so that's exactly what you want to do against the A's team. So they looked ready that first game at least.
Corey Seager could win MVP.
No, he can't.
Okay. I wanted to say that anyways. I've been pumping Corey Seager's tires ever since they got rid of the shift.
He could be runner-up.
Yeah. I think he might win a batting title. How many plate appearances do you need to win a batting title?
I think 3, right? It's 3.1 times 162.
3 something per game. So that would be 100.
It's 3.1 plate appearances times 162. He has 485, so he will qualify. And right now he is leading. Right now he's qualifying and he's leading. So I believe Corey Seager will win a batting title. How about that?
How about it? Corey Seager. We're going to have him on the show next week. That's a joke. Let's keep it moving. American League West has major implications on the rest of the playoffs. We've talked about, because there's going to be one division winner And then it's going to be either the Mariners and the Rangers or the Astros and the Rangers. Those two teams competing for the wild card. There's 2 wild card spots left, but there's another team in the AL East, the Toronto Blue Jays, that have been good lately, I guess. We don't talk about them that much in the power ranking panel when they're not relevant. We get a little bit of Blue Jays talk this week. Do you put the Blue Jays ahead of the teams in the AL West? Do you think the Blue Jays could win the AL West?
Oh, I don't know about that. And I kind of don't care about that because it's not really relevant right now. I do put them ahead of the Wild. I think they have the best chance of the teams we're talking about here. Now, obviously, we've said the Rays are likely to be the wild card 1 team. Okay, great. Now we have this battle between the Mariners, Rangers, most likely, and the Blue Jays. And in my opinion, I think the Blue Jays are going to leapfrog over those 2 teams and have the number 2 spot. And here's why. It's all about scheduling. Look at their schedule. It's 6 against the Yankees, 6 against the Rays. They're not playing any other teams. They're not going to beat up or cannibalize themselves like you're going to see, especially like we talked about with that crazy Mariners schedule. They don't have to deal with any of that. All they got to do is win their games, and they're in business. Plus, they already have a little bit of a lead. It's small, but they right now are the number 2 team. They already have a game lead over the Mariners and Rangers. So because of that, I'm not confident because it's so close, but I'm more confident than I am with other things that the Blue Jays will be the number 2 wildcard team.
You don't think the Yankees have that juice in them? We're talking here right now about the Blue Jays closing out the season with 6 games against the Yankees.
Yeah.
You don't think the Yankees have the juice to go in and just slap the Blue Jays? I think they get a fucking really good effort from the Yankees, at least in the first 3 games. Pull up the wild card. What are the Yankees? 6 games back. 6 games back with 6 games to play against the Blue Jays. The Yankees take the field against the Blue Jays. Whether you and I think it's crazy, the players on the Yankees are taking the field under the impression that like the destiny's in our hands. We can control our fate here. We can win out and put ourselves in the playoffs and justify this messy 2023 season. I would be very hesitant as a Blue Jays fan playing the Yankees the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're just kind of like beating off some team that's going nowhere. Like, look,
they still have to play the fucking games. I'm not beating off shit. I mean, the New York Yankees are a fucking major league baseball.
Would you rather play the Astros?
I'd rather play the fucking Houston. I would rather play the Oakland Athletics. I would rather play yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like,
but the Mariners.
You brought up the Yankees as if we're just going to the Yankees are.
I'm saying I would rather.
You brought it up as a big advantage for the Blue Jays. You said it's a big advantage for the Blue Jays.
It is a big advantage.
Schedule, but the team they're playing is chasing them. Like, wouldn't you rather play?
Would you rather play the Rangers for 7 games and the Astros for 3, or would you rather play the Yankees? I'd rather play the Yankees.
Would you rather have a hungry dog chase you or a well-fed dog chase you?
I don't think any of these dogs are well-fed, though. They're all hungry. They're all fighting for something. And there's a good chance the Yankees are eliminated by that second time they play. By the way, this Yankees rotation, Garrett Cole is awesome. But then, like, Clark Schmidt, Johnny Brito, Carlos Rodon, who sucks. He stinks. And Randy Vasquez, who's like, I mean, what are we doing here? Yes, I'd much rather play that schedule. Yes.
If I'm not playing devil's advocate, I'm not doing my fucking job. What are the Yankees? 6-2 over their last 8?
I will say, well, it's sad what happened to Jason Dominguez, but the Yankees are some of these young guys. They have had a life to them this month that you didn't see last month. Like, they've definitely, are a much more interesting and exciting team to watch than they were in August. But having said that, though, like I said, the Mariners, they are playing a gauntlet. Once they're done with that A series, it's all tough teams, every single, where the Blue Jays, the Rays are good, but I think by the last time they play them, they're going to be gearing up for the playoffs. So they'll be kind of, I say, checked out, but they're not going to be putting their best pitchers against you. And the Yankees, Yankees are like an average team.
And I'm bringing up the Yankees and their competitiveness more as a detriment to the Blue Jays and their schedule to close the season than I am saying the Yankees are chasing the wild card. We might be getting lost here for the audience. I apologize. I'm getting too deep here on like the Yankees' playoff chances. It's just merely from a scheduling standpoint because the Blue Jays have a 6-game lead and 6 games left against the Yankees. So it's just an interesting dynamic is to think about, do these teams give a fuck? Because people will say, hey, if you're playing the Braves end of the season, you're playing the Brewers end of the season, the Twins, teams that have it locked up, they could be running out a guy from the 40-man. They could be getting some player development stuff in. They could be saving their arms in the bullpen. It's all fucking gas, no brakes if you're the Yankees.
So the Blue Jays, we know this for certain. Here's the pitching probables for this series, which starts, when people hear this, started yesterday. They have to face Clark Schmidt, Michael King, and Garrett Cole. I wouldn't say that.
You got to go 2-1. I mean,
I think so. I think you're right. I think, and especially when they have a game lead already over the other teams. They're, the Blue Jays have a 1-game lead over the Mariners and over the Rangers. They just got to keep that. That's the other nice thing, because you obviously want to compete for the division. But all they got to worry about is that wild card. All they got to worry about is just beating one of those two teams. That's all they have to do. And right now they're doing it. They have 12 games left.
So let's fill it out. We've got AL West Astros.
Yeah.
Wild card 1, Rays. Wild card 2,
Blue Jays.
Wild card 3.
Ugh. I guess Mariners because they're playing better. I trust their bullpen, but that schedule is tough.
The odd man out there is in the Rangers. So it's one of these teams. Here's a cause of, I guess, maybe inner peace as a baseball fan, because when we get to the National League quickly, we'll see. I mean, there's a clear divide for playoff teams in the American League and non-playoff teams. The National League, we start to get real. The gray territory there is fucking crazy. The Giants are in, the Reds, like the Marlins. Everybody's got their taste for the National League.
Yep.
The American League, at least, even if these teams are heavily flawed, the Astros should be better than their roster dictates. Maybe the Rangers overachieved early, and they've played better than the starting pitching suggests. And there's so many different angles to take with the American League to diminish these teams. Like, dude, every fucking Monday we diminish the Orioles. We sit here and we talk about their pitching staff. We're not really sure about them. Like, it's clearly a top 3 team in baseball. But the American League allows you to kind of poke holes in it. These teams aren't good. If when you get to the National League, you're like, oh, they're fine. They can compete. They can go win 87 games and go to the playoffs. So
yeah, I'm
comfortable with where we're at the American League. I'll just recap. It's like 1 is Orioles or Rays, probably Orioles.
Yes.
2 is whoever comes out of the West, which we think could be the Astros. But, if it's Mariners or Rangers, that's in front of them. 3 is clearly the Twins.
Yes.
And then those last 3 wild card spots, between the team that misses it from the AL East, teams from the AL West, and then obviously the Blue Jays. Everybody else is so far fucking behind. And even then we'd say the Twins. Like, we don't even talk about the Twins on Monday. One of the division teams doesn't even get any playing time when we talk about the best teams in baseball. The American League certainly is separated from the middle of the pack. Now, when you look at the National League, how would you describe the National League to somebody who does not know a fucking thing about baseball? It's like, so there's 3 different leagues. There's the American League, and then there's what's the National League like, Klemmer?
It's top heavy. You have greatness, and then you have mediocrity. Where in the American League, you have goodness, and you have the most horrible things you can imagine. And that's the A's and the Royals. You have a sewer. So you have goodness, which is, parity of goodness, and you have a sewer. And then in the National League, you have greatness, mediocrity, and then kind of lousy. Like the Pirates are kind of lousy. The Mets are kind of lousy. The Nationals are lousy. But the Nationals aren't a sewer. I thought the Nationals were going to be a sewer team this year. I was wrong. They just suck. They're not a sewer.
You've been out on David Martinez since
I like Davey Martinez. He's not the problem. And I don't mind what Rizzo's doing. I think they're doing the right things. Sometimes you got to be bad to be good. And that's what they're doing. It's a cycle. It's fine. They're doing the right things. Davey Martinez is a team playing. I watch a lot of Nationals games. The Mets and everything else. And Davey Martinez has that team playing hard. They don't have a lot of talent. They have very little talent on that team. But he has them making the most of their abilities. They're not going to lose 100 games this year. I thought they would.
All right, quickly, Mike Rizzo is a Chicago guy. Are New York people like this? We're like, I'm so proud of the fact that Mike Rizzo is a Chicago guy, grew up in the city, went to school at the University of Illinois after playing a little bit of pro ball, carved out his career. So you're like, oh.
I don't think so. I'm like, honestly, you find that like with New Hampshire, because I grew up in New York and New Hampshire. Like New Hampshire is very much like, that guy's from New Hampshire. You get really excited. So that definitely happens. With New York, I think it's so big, you kind of don't.
Yeah. Mike Rizzo, shout out Mike Rizzo. I'd always listen to the show. Excited to have you on the offseason. Staying in the National League. East wrapped up, West wrapped up, 1 and 2 locked. Brewers seem to have their hands wrapped around the number 3 seed comfortably. Cubs have dipped lately. Brewers keep surging. So 1 through 3 is lined up. Then we get the 4 through 6 in the playoffs. And 4 through 6 is really the wild card. And the Phillies at the time of recording are clear control first wild card spot in the National League. And we've repeatedly said throughout the year, maybe since they turned it on in June or late May, you started to see the Phillies from last year. They shook off the World Series hangover. They're about as talented as you get out of the National League. You talk about competing against that Braves roster. Are you comfortable and confident right now at the time of recording to say it's a guarantee the Phillies will be in the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
They have a magic number of 8, and they're better than every team that's chasing them.
Firm guarantee or soft guarantee?
Firm guarantee. The other reason, too, is let's say one of those teams, let's say the Diamondbacks or Cubs get insanely hot. They win out. Okay, the Phillies just have the number 2 spot in the wild card. You know what I mean? I don't see how the Phillies drop back.
They're not playing themselves out of the wild card series.
Right.
Okay.
And having said that, though, I'm very confident not only will they make the wild card, they'll have the number 1 spot in the wild card. I'm very confident.
So 3 wild card spots in the National League. I mean, obviously, there's 3 wild card spots. One of them to the Phillies. Yeah. Probably the first wild card spot, which is the 4th overall seed in the National League, which then gives us 2 spots left in the playoffs, the 5th and the 6th seed. And the teams that are vying for them are the Diamondbacks, the Reds, the Cubs, the Giants, and the Marlins. There's 5 teams chasing these 2 playoff spots. The 5 identities couldn't be any different. If I had to scatter plot out the identities of pitching and defense and offensive output, pitching and defense would be on the x-axis and offensive output's on the y-axis. The scatter plot of these teams is fucking crazy. Let me repeat them again. The Chicago Cubs, the San Francisco Giants, the Miami Marlins, the Cincinnati Reds, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Who do you like most out of that group of 5?
You know what's funny? The team I like the most is the team that has the least chance. It's the Giants. The Giants are 2 back of the wild card. They got to jump over a lot of teams. I don't like their chances a ton. To me, that's the best team, I guess, of these. But that's weak praise because none of these teams are particularly good.
I think that's the better point. Is that we can sit here and spin our tires on these 5 teams all day. You're playing for the right to get. You're playing for the right to go to Philly so then you can go to Atlanta. You're playing for the right to go to Milwaukee so that you can then go to Los Angeles. Out of any of these 5 teams, does anybody even stand a chance? The Marlins? Is their starting pitching?
Well, not with Alcantara hurt. So let's talk the Giants for a second because they have the least. I think they have the least chance, and we can maybe just rule them out quickly here.
Even though you like them the most,
I like their roster the most. Right. So the Giants have the next 2 games of the Giants' whole season, in my opinion. They have 2 against the Diamondbacks. When people hear this, they already played one of those games, and they played the second one on Wednesday. Then they have, for the rest of the season, they have 7 against the Dodgers, who, that sounds scary and ominous, but we don't really know what kind of shape the Dodgers are going to be in. Also, that last series, they have the finished season, they have 3 against the Dodgers. The Dodgers obviously going to be kind of angling at that point, just getting stuff ready for the playoffs. They have 3 against the Padres as well mixed in there. You know, they got the Blake Snell Cy Young tour here that he's trying. So maybe there's effort there. The other games, I guess the Padres is kind of punting those games. But this Diamondback series is huge because Diamondback's one of the teams they're chasing. So let's look at the pitching problems real quick. Got Alex Cobb versus Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen in Arizona when people have already heard that happen. But Zach Gallen is at home incredible. So that's a really tough matchup for the Giants. And then they follow that up tomorrow, or when people hear this later today, with Logan Webb versus Merrill Kelly. So the Diamondbacks are putting their 1-2 against them. I think the Giants, if they lose even one of these games, they're probably cooked. I think. I just think it's going to be too hard of a mountain to climb. I think. I say that, but then again, watch. The problem is when these teams are this bad, and they are for playoff teams, what we're talking about, these teams are lousy. These are terrible playoff teams. We're talking about teams that have winning percentage of 520, 517. That means you win 83 games for it. That's a horrible playoff team. The 73 Mets won 83 games, 82 games, 82 and 79. They went to the World Series. That's still a pretty bad playoff team. I mean, let's call it what it is. So that's where. So the problem is, any one of these teams, and we saw with the Cubs right now, they've lost 5 in a row, could fall apart at any given time, any given moment. These teams could disintegrate in front of our eyes. So I don't really know which end is up. I do think the Giants are probably the one because of time and where they are. We can rule out. I think.
So then, then if we go over to the Diamondbacks, just bring up. I mean, they're throwing Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly out there in must-win situations for the next 2 games. Like, and that's about as comfortable as you get when you're putting starting pitchers out on your home field down the stretch. Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly are a phenomenal 1-2 punch.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that, especially among the teams we're talking about here. When you have teams like the Reds who have like barely any pitching at all, and you have teams like the Marlins who did, but then Alcantara gets hurt.
So why not rule the Reds out before the Giants?
Because the Reds are still in the thick of things. Like the Reds right now are tied, right, for a spot. So like I can't rule them out. Like they're right there. They're literally tied with the Cubs. They've played 2 more games than the Cubs, but they have 1 more win and 1 less loss. So I can't rule them out. The Diamondbacks, they have the Giants, like I mentioned. Then they play the Yankees for 3 against the White Sox, and then 3 against the Astros to finish the season. They have, a total of 11 games left, which means they get pitch Gallen 3 more times.
Huge advantage.
I think so, right? And
his win, pure open market value, he's worth 1 point. If Scherzer and Verlander are getting $43 million a season, you could argue Zach Gallen's worth $1.5 million per start, and that somebody else underneath him, a replacement level's worth fucking $100,000, $150,000. But like getting an extra start out of Zach Gallen at the time when it's necessary, I can't even right now do justice of how valuable that is versus running out Tommy fucking Henry or whoever is healthy out of it.
You're right. You're exactly right. The other thing too is 2 of those games are going to be at home, and I can't emphasize enough. Zach Gallen's home and road splits are just out of control. So the first game against the Giants, people would already have heard that happen. The next game would be against the White Sox, and then that's also a team that's just playing the string out. They're terrible. And then you have the Astros. I think Gallen right now. And this is why I like the Diamondback setup. Gallen would pitch that final game. Now, if the Diamondbacks already clinched, you could save Gallen and have him pitch game 1 of the playoffs. So the Diamondbacks have everything lined up the right way. Having said that, and they also do have a half-game lead. But when it's this close over the Cubs and Reds, and then a 1-game lead over the Marlins, and a 2.5-game lead over the Giants.
I mean, I know we're keep coming back to this, like at the point of recording when you guys hear this. It's Tuesday night. It's 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Games are about to start. Sorry, I needed some time to edit the fucking show, or else we do this thing at midnight. And Lone Wolfer, I said we're hanging out by a thread. Just stick with me here, guys. My point is this: at the time of recording, generally, I'm trying to look at it and say, okay, fine. We say the Phillies are going to be in the wild card mix, even if they're not the 4, they're at the least a 6.
Yeah.
So now we have these other 2 spots to play with, and these 5 teams. And the 5 teams, the Reds, the Giants, the Cubs, the Marlins, and the
Giants.
Did I say the Giants, the Reds, Giants, Cubs, Marlins? Well,
I'm willing to rule the Giants out. I mean, just because, and maybe that's unfair, and maybe they'll win both these games in Arizona, but I think at this point we have to rule somebody out, and they're the easy, just because they're just too far back. So that leaves us with Diamondbacks, Cubs, Reds, and Marlins for 2 spots. I don't really like the Marlins here. They haven't been playing very well. The other reason I don't really love their chances is that pitching staff's kind of falling apart a little bit with Alcantara going down. That's huge for them. They really needed him. They really need as much great pitching as they can. So, I mean, for that reason, also Yuri Perez has crashed back there. He's got an ERA of 3.06 right now. They have Luzardo. They have Garrett. Garrett, I believe, is pitching tonight. Or no, he just pitched. I'm sorry. They are pitching, no, Garrett does pitch tonight, They don't have a pitcher announced for tomorrow yet. The problem for tomorrow is they're facing Kodai Senga, who's been very good this year. And so, like, the Marlins don't have an easy road on that end as far as this current series here with the Mets. Even though I know the Mets are kind of a trash bag team, which they are, they're playing them in kind of the wrong team. The Mets are playing, believe it or not, their best baseball since April right now. So that's tough for them. Now, to make matters even worse, the Marlins then face the Brewers for 3. Brewers are playing lights out. I would not want to play the Brewers at all right now. Then they got to play the Mets in Citi Field, and I believe Senga is going to be pitching one of those games. Another guy who has great home road splits. He's great at Citi Field. And then you finish the season off with 3 against the Pirates. That could be a chance for you to make up some ground. But that's the last 3 games of the year. I don't know. I just don't know if the Marlins have enough gas in the tank with Alcantara out.
And even more frustrating for the Marlins has to be like, last year, Alcantara putting up such a historic season, like they just needed a fraction of that this year. They just needed like 2 weeks of that this year as opposed to 2 weeks of him coming back to earth. Even bringing up Yuri Perez, young phenom, like Jesus Luzardo has stuff, has been in the big leagues, has made starts, has the stuff to go out and throw 7 scoreless with 12 punchies. So we put Yuri Perez on a pedestal. I do this with you. I do this. We're national baseball fans. We're just excited. This guy. It's like, well, this guy comes crashing on earth. Like, it's going to happen. It's the big leagues. It's fucking impossible. Like, you're just going to come and say, not good in air. Like, it's so advanced and difficult to sustain that initial wave of success. So I'm just sitting here as putting myself in the shoes of a Marlins stakeholder, somebody who gives a fuck. The fact that you can just circle Sandy Alcantara's name this year, and be like, here's the reason we do or don't go to the playoffs, likely don't, after everything everybody else has contributed to get to this point, has got to be such a sour fucking taste. Certainly not anything we saw coming. And all the more reason to like, dude, you got to keep getting better and developing. You have to keep trying to get arms up. Talked about this thing in the Chicago office with a couple of the Cubs fans, just like bullshit around. Like, did you guys think 2017 when they beat the Washington Nationals that would be it? That's it. The window's over. Rizzo's done. Trade Chris Bryant. Get rid of Javi Baez. Just blow the whole fuck. No, you have no idea as a baseball fan. You're just sitting being like, yeah, we got 5 more years. Sandy's coming back. Yuri's fucking awesome. Luzardo's great. Like, no, dude, nothing at all is guaranteed this game. And just a long-winded way to say, I can't believe the Marlins are like on the tipping point of going to the playoffs and like they could miss out. And they're like, well, man, Sandy didn't show up.
Well, the real reason, I think the biggest reason they're not going to make the playoffs is one guy, and it goes back to development. They made a midseason trade with the Mets because they had to, because they didn't have enough bullpen arms. They went and got David Robertson, who promptly blew so many games he lost his closer spot. I believe he blew at least 4 games. If he doesn't blow those games, the Marlins are absolutely in the playoffs, because they're just not like they're as it is right now. They're only a half game back, right? So like they had 4 more wins that are 4 more losses. They are in. That's how close. That's how narrow this is right now with this wild card. And I like David Robertson. Seems like a good guy. I don't mean to pin it on him, but it is his fault.
Great calves too. Undersized guy with great calves. Quickly, I want to go back to an early part of the show. The Yankees have 4 more wins than losses, Bill, and it's a completely different segment we had earlier in the show. It's easy to play that game. It's hard to win a baseball game.
The Yankees would be competitive. They still would be on the outside looking in, but it'd be a lot closer. I mean, I would not be ruling them out if they win the National League right now. We'd be talking about them the same way. They have the same record as the Giants. Exactly the same, actually. So we'd be going, ooh, I don't know. But
these are great thought exercises as we kind of wrap, as we're kind of getting towards the end of the show here. And I don't want to spend the remainder, bullshit about the Yankees. We got their 6-game talking. I want to make sure there's a talking point. Because we're talking here in the National League, though, there's the 3 teams left for the 2 spots we talked about, assuming that the Phillies.
So I'm ruling the Marlins out.
Yeah, you rolled them out. You just rolled them out. Marlins are out. Reds are out.
No, I did not. I did not rule the Reds out yet. I ruled the Giants.
No. I wrote out Giants. I'm sorry.
I'm about to rule the Reds out, though. So,
you fucking piece of shit. Giants and Marlins are out.
Yeah.
You've got Reds, Cubs, D-backs left, and you are now you're slicing out the Reds. You're carving them off.
I am. Look. There's 12. Actually, for the Reds, there's only 10 games left. So anything can happen. To the Reds' credit, they do have a 79 win. So they have 1 more win than the Cubs. They just have 1 more loss. But I just don't think they have enough pitching in the tank. Graham Ashcraft out for the rest of the year. That leaves them with Andrew Abbott, who's been struggling of late. Brandon Williamson, who actually hasn't been that bad. Hunter Green, Ben Lively, who's, that's less said the better. There's just not enough arms here to, I don't think. It's 10 games. Anything can happen. I wrote a blog last week how Ellie De La Cruz is, stinks right now. He's a terrible baseball player in the second half. He's been bad. He'll figure it out, and I think he's going to have a very nice career. I think he's going to be a multiple-time All-Star, but right now he's bad. But if he's got a lot of talent, raw talent, obviously. If he can somehow figure it out, last of that, and go on this crazy 10-game swing where he hits 8 home runs, Reds are in the playoffs. But if everything kind of sticks to how I think how it kind of has been playing, I don't know if the Reds have enough gas in the tank. The other thing too, Matt McClain's still out. Like, though, losing him is just so crucial. And they didn't really make a lot of moves at the deadline. They went and got they got Hunter Renfroe, right? And they DFA'd him, and they went and got Harrison Bader, and I think they just put him on the IL. So they really don't have any big moves they've made. They've been trying, and I understand they weren't going to win the World Series this year anyway. But I think they're just going to fall short. I don't see them making it.
It's been a great story. You have between them and the Cubs, two teams that have really leaned into momentum and win streaks and hot spurts. There's been times nobody wanted to play the Reds, and there's been times this season nobody would want to play the Cubs. But we knew while it was going on, this isn't sustainable. This isn't who that team is over 162. I had fun with it in the Power Ranking Battle. You hammered them to say they're not nearly as good as this. I'm more willing to buy into that momentum and say right now they're very fucking good. But now we come down to the end of the season, one of these two teams is going to play. Like the Reds or the Cubs. Under this hypothetical thought exercise, we rule out the Marlins, we rule out the Giants. One of the two teams, the Reds and the Cubs, faulty NL Central teams, glaring weaknesses in some areas. But momentum. I don't know if I could say the same thing about the Giants and the Marlins. The Diamondbacks, yes. Where I look at these teams and I go, oh, this team can get fucking hot for like 3 weeks. You want to stay the fuck away from this team. The Reds and the Cubs can do that, even though they're like weaker teams. The Diamondbacks can do that. So there's 3 teams left here: Reds, Cubs, Diamondbacks. You're rolling Reds out. You're saying Cubs, Diamondbacks? You like Cubs, Diamondbacks?
Yeah, one more with the Reds. The Reds have 2 more against the Twins, and then they have 3 against the Pirates, who stink. 2 in Cleveland, which, I don't know, that team's weird. And then 3 against the Cardinals, another kind of weird team that kind of stinks. But so the Reds' schedule isn't particularly devastatingly hard. I just don't think they have enough horses to get them. Now, the Cubs' schedule is, and you're pretty familiar with this, is a little different. So they have the Pirates. Then they play the Rockies in Chicago, which I love. The Rockies are horrible. This team is so bad. But then they play the Braves in Atlanta, who in theory would already be kind of getting ready for the playoffs. They've kind of already seen that with them. They aren't the same Braves team this past week they have been. And then 3 against the Brewers, who I think by that point are already going to have everything locked up. So while you are facing 2 playoff teams, you're getting at the best possible time. And I think because of that, the Cubs, who have lost 5 in a row as we tape this, I think can hold everyone else off. I think, and I say that with absolutely no confidence.
So here's my very close to the ground sentiment of the Cubs is that they've played their best baseball this season already, and now they're in the midst of playing their worst baseball right now. Like right now, 5 in a row. At the time, you can't lose 5 in a row. They could have been bigger losing streaks earlier in the season, but right now as a team, when you show up with the mindset we have to win today's game, we want to win today's game, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win, and you drop 5 in a row of those, that's the worst stretch of the season to me. So can they jump out of that as quick as possible? They were off on Monday. Now you're home against the Pirates for 3. If they can get out of this quickly, if there's a hangover tonight, again, at time to record it, they got to go play the Pirates tonight. There's a hangover in the 4th, 5th inning. I'm very nervous. This is a Cubs team opportunity right now. Come out, first time through the lineup, put a crooked number up on the board. They played their worst baseball of the season right now over the last week. They've also played their best baseball of the season, and some of the best baseball we've seen all season in the second half. So really, as a Cubs fan, it's like the last 10 days of the season are going to dictate how good this season was and ultimately the success of the year. And then at that point, you're saying they have to come out of the worst funk that they've had all season long. Way less to me about the team they're playing against than it is about the team that's showing up to the field and how they feel when they take that field. You can say the Pirates are good, bad, whatever. They're 16 and 14 over the last 30. They're identical records over the last 3 weeks compared to the Cubs. And they're like a game worse in the second half, or maybe since August 1st. The Pirates have been competitive enough where it's not like they're going out and playing fucking Helen Keller School for the Blind.
The Rockies, it is that, exactly that. Here's one thing I like about the Cubs, and here's why I have the Cubs.
Major League Baseball. These guys are fucking good.
I'm not going to.
Oh, come on, man. It's not like
real. Like the Royals and A's.
They can lose. They can lose. They can lose. But they can lose. It's not the NFL. It's not the NBA. It's not like fucking a bad team and a good team. and you should go out and beat that team. Of course they should. Of course they should beat the Pirates, but they could drop 2 or 3 to the Pirates very fucking easily, pal. The Cardinals,
the Rockies are horrible.
The Cardinals went 11-16 in August, and their 2 series wins were against the Orioles and the Rays.
Oh, it's baseball, Susan. Shit happens. I get it. But the Rockies are a terrible team. I mean, look, at the end of the day, right, we're looking at the schedule, be like, who would you rather play? Yes, they're all major league teams. We could do the MLB network thing. We're like, those guys, they're going to give it a real shot. The Rockies have, good leadership. But the Rockies fucking suck. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, but that doesn't change when the batter gets in the box. Is the batter like, I suck, I play for the Rockies? Or is the batter like, I'm fucking major league baseball?
I'm getting Chase Anderson tonight. Let's go. I would be, because it's a lot better than facing Zach Gallen. These guys stink. They're a bad team. I'm sorry. There's good teams. There's bad teams. The Rockies are a terrible team. Rockies are the worst team in the National League. There's no one I'd rather play than the Rockies outside of Colorado, especially. That's the best thing you could hope for.
But the isolation of the event that we're talking about, the game, it's just one game.
I know.
The Rockies suck over 162. But the fucking game in this moment, right now, today. So you can't tell the 9 players from the Rockies that are taking that lineup, they're like, oh, by the way, did you guys know you suck? Not one of those motherfuckers is thinking that when they take the field. Every single guy out there is taking the field being like, I'm going to get my pitch in, I'm going to drive it, they're working on this. They're not caught up the way we're talking about, which is why I'm hesitant to say they're going to – it's just I'm hesitant to say that team sucks, they're going to run it down their fucking throats.
I'll say that team stinks. Listen, the best teams in the world lose 54 games. The worst teams in the world win 54 games. It's the other 54 that make the difference between greatness and being horrible. The Rockies are a terrible baseball team. There's no, if we're doing this exercise, we have 10, 11 games left, and I see 3 against the Rockies, I'm looking at my fucking chops. Because I'm looking for any edge I have. Because right now I am tied literally tied for the last playoff spot. So if you're telling me I'm getting 3 against the Rockies, awesome. I'll take any edge I can have. The other edge I like for the Cubs, Justin Steele, if you manipulate your off day properly, he can pitch 3 times before the end of the season. He's going on Wednesday. You have an off day on the 25th, that Monday. You could have him pitch the first game of the Braves series, and you could have him pitch the very last game against the Brewers. The other reason I like that is if the Cubs are able to take care of business, you can have Justin Steele pitch that game 1 of the playoffs. That's the kind of shit I'm looking at. I don't really give a fuck what Rockies guys think about when they're going to the batter's box. I can't imagine that. I don't understand that. I also can't quantify that. But I do care about things that are in front of me. And the Rockies are a terrible baseball team. Cubs get Justin Steele 3 times. Zach Gallen gets to go 3 times for the Diamondbacks, as well as having Merrill Kelly go a couple times. That's why, for me, those 2 teams are the teams I like. But I say that with very little confidence.
Yeah.
To your point, there's only 11 games left. Anything can happen.
Yeah, for us to express any level of confidence, we know, here's the confidence. I know the Twins are the 3 seed. I know the Brewers are the 3 seed.
Right.
I know the Dodgers and the Braves we're kicking these tires as much as possible. And me as a vulnerable Cubs fan, sure, I'm just trying to say, at this point in the season, I don't know if we could say this team sucks, that team sucks. One last wrinkle I'd throw in there is people get called, for a guy who has watched 90 to 100 lost Cubs seasons most of his life, okay? September baseball to me means fucking nothing. The amount of guys that come up, career minor leaguers, good story, bad team, playoff breaks are on, the narratives are this and that, football season starts. It's just this waning level of interest in Major League Baseball from all stakeholders. Everybody who plays the game. So you see Mike Quaddy come up and manage the Cubs to a 20-9 record and say, maybe he's got the secret sauce. When the reality is, you're finally giving players a chance. There is an element to this player playing with his hair on fire and his fucking ass is off. Every pitch matters, every play matters, everything matters to these players. And you see an influx of those players in September. Meaningless things. Guys that don't even get baseball cards. So that's where we're talking about the Pirates and the Rockies. We're like, yeah, they call up the fucking guy from AAA who's been there for 8 years, and this is his big moment. There's a little bit there that makes me nervous as a Cubs fan to say to write that team off. Where it's like, well, when you have nothing to play for in baseball, then you're comfortable and you relax. I don't know if I would take a bottom tier Rockies or Pirates team or a Braves team that's already clinched and is kind of riding in and I don't know, the team playing with their hair on fire, who gives a fuck, and each player wants to get shit matters for arbitration. You want to go get signed next season. There's a lot of those guys on these shitty teams at the end of the year. That's my sentiment.
So I'll push back a little bit on that. So I think you're right to some extent with how it used to be. Because remember back in the day, it used to expand to 40-man rosters in September. It kind of made a mockery of the game. You'd have like crazy bullpens, you'd have these crazy guys. Like it was just baseball got really weird in September for exactly what you're saying. Well, they changed that rule. Now it's only 28-man rosters in September. So it's not as kind of like goofy or wacky. As far as the Rockies being horrible, I'm very confident saying they're horrible. They were 7-20 in August. They're 7-10 in September, which I guess is better. They're 22-54 on the road. That's why I keep pushing that narrative with the Rockies on the road. If you get the Rockies on the road, they are horrible. I think they're on base. I was looking up today because that's my pick of the day today was against them. I want to say they have a on base percentage as a team of like under like 290 or 291 or something at home on the road as a team. They are horrible. They are a terrible, 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 terrible team. And I would much rather, because at the end of the day, that's the great equalizer is talent. Like I'd much rather play the bad team if I don't have 11 games left than the good team. It's that simple. Now, does it always work? Could the Rockies sweep them? Of course, it's baseball. I think now that's why we love baseball. It's weird. But most likely, I really like the Cubs playing the Rockies. And I feel as much as confident about that as I do any other matchup we talked about.
Well said. I'm just talking people off of schedule lines up favorably. You should be programmed into this as fucking Cupcake City. Is this where it hurts the most? How we lose the 3 games of the Pirates right now? It's like, bro, we lost a fucking series of the Pirates in May. Like, go look at the calendar. There's plenty of series we've lost this year. You're like, how the fuck did we lose it? Now that these are just the last series of the year, and you can come in, you can lose one, you're like, oh, when it mattered the most. It's like, most of the time, they all matter. It's just, this is where the game can make you fucking crazy, because you expect A or B or C, and you end up getting fucking X, Y, Z. You're so far removed from what you get.
I'll also say this. None of these teams we're talking about in this wild card are good teams. Like, they're not good. They're
not at all within the way that we understand playoff teams. That was something you said earlier in the show. I fucking love that. I hope people paused it, sent it to a loved one, shared it, downloaded it. We were saying these are not good playoff teams.
No, they're not good. They're not good baseball teams.
Yeah, no,
they're okay. They're okay teams, and there's a lot of them, which is interesting, and it makes it fun for us. It makes it fun for both. I know both me and you are going to be watching these games. We're going to be like, this is crazy. It's fun. I love these kind of wild races. I'm super excited about all this. I don't know what's going to happen. The Giants, I ruled them out. The Giants could go on a run here. Maybe they beat up Gallen. Maybe they beat up Kelly. There's 11 games left. When you get it close, things can get really random really fast. You're right. The Rockies could sweep the Cubs. But all things considered, out of all things we talked about, that's the least likely thing to happen, I think.
Closing points. As you talk about the randomness, I'm drawn to the competitiveness of this new playoff format. And the Phillies making the World Series competitively last year, almost dominantly in the National League. And the Padres-Phillies NLCS in and of itself. If this new playoff format lends itself to more randomness, which is a better way of saying like seeing 85 and 86 win teams compete for the pennant, I'm almost inclined to shrink the playoff format then. Because I don't like it if it's an extended 10, 15 years from now, and we can empirically say your regular season record does not predict success in the playoffs, then I get uncomfortable. If we can come back 10, 15 years from now and say, well, the fucking Braves as a dominant 1 seed doesn't mean shit because they get smoked in the playoffs, I don't like that. I do like being rewarded for 6 months of great play. And I don't know if this playoff format lends itself to it. I'm not saying objectively that I don't want to see 86 win teams compete for the World Series. As Cubs fans, let's get in there, fucking 6 seed, cause hell, beat the Brewers, go out, fucking stomp on the Dodgers, get the Braves every fucking bit of, trouble they could ask for. I'm saying if 10, 15 years from now, that's a routine, repetitive narrative that comes out of this playoff format, I'm going to be a little salty about that. Would you be as a baseball historian, somebody who's watched way more than me?
Yeah, I would. So I didn't like it when we added the wild card in '94. Honestly, we had 4 teams made the playoffs every year. You had the LCSs. That's when you were right to the World Series after that. And I'm sure if I was alive in 1969, I would have been pissed off. They added 2 divisions. That would have pissed me off. Having said that, though, you do get used to it and you start to enjoy it. Now, you mentioned 86, 87 win teams. You're being kind of kind, Carl. Now, the AL, I think you're going to see a team make it to the playoffs that has 88 or 89 wins, which is I'm okay with. The NL, you're talking about a team making the playoffs that has 83, 84 wins. And that is a pretty big difference in my mind as far as like quality of team. Now we're talking, because 89 to me is like that's the limit of where I can like really like, what are we doing here? 83, and I know I mentioned the Mets in 73. There are examples, but 83. I know you mentioned the Phillies last year. They still won 86. Like this wild card team is the kind of race to mediocrity that we have here in the National League wild card is not. It's not great from a skill perspective, but it's also fun to see different teams get in there. Like it is fun. It is interesting to see the Reds be a contender this year. It's interesting that the Diamondbacks. It's interesting the Cubs are kind of a year ahead of schedule. The Marlins. Like it is fun to see these different teams. That's what you're going to get if you have a wider playoff berth. So I don't want to be vague here, but I can kind of see both sides. Now, one thing I do want to talk about real quick before we get off here is big baseball news happened yesterday. The Rays officially have a new stadium plan. It's going to be a dome, which I don't like. Not a retractable roof, a dome. But regardless, it's not what I want to talk about right now. That's going to set up the stage for expansion. Because they've said all along, they want the A's situation to be resolved. They're going to Vegas. They wanted the Rays situation to be resolved. They're staying put. And now you're going to see expansion get fast-tracked. I believe you're going to see an expansion announcement potentially at winter meetings, which is in Nashville, who are one of the teams I think is going to get an expansion team. I think the other team probably could be Montreal. So if those happen, now you're going to have 16-team divisions, leagues. You could have 2 8 teams, and then you have like a bunch of wild cards. Like you whatever we know is the playoffs right now. My point is this is going to change drastically. So expect major changes from your playoff picture than what you have right now.
Well, thank you for that. Because as I'm sitting here and getting antsy about it is going to keep changing, and expansion is on the horizon. I have Charlotte flagged because MLB did some fucking weird. MLB sent MLB Network out to Charlotte a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about the Charlotte skyline and how great it is. I saw Jeff Passan reported live from Charlotte. I'm thinking to myself, the only reason that's MLB's reporter. They're sending him out there.
Charlotte is the next team on my list. I think Nashville has a great chance. They have minority ownership. They also have kind of feet on the ground. Dave Stewart's running the show over there, and they already have deals with local sponsors. They already are very integrated in the community. Montreal has a huge media market. Things have changed in 2004. Like the landscape of how media is consumed has changed drastically since the Expos left. Obviously, they have to commit to building a new stadium before you put a team there. But the next team on my list, it would be Charlotte. So I think they have a very real chance.
I hope Montreal does get it, just so you and I can do the podcast about like the history of the Expos.
Probably great.
And we could dig into like, so what does this mean for club history? Does that mean Jose Vidro's stats go back to the Montreal Expos, or do they stay with the Washington Nationals?
Well, it's a Cleveland Browns situation, and they gave the stats back to Cleveland. So I would hope that Jose Vidro and Delano DeShields and Tim Wallach would all stay in Montreal, I would hope.
Shout out Rondell White.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ron D.L. White, as he was called, because he always got hurt.
I saw him homer twice at Wrigley Field in 1998, and then a couple of years later, the Cubs traded for him at a deadline, and I would have told you a 14-year-old Barstool Carl who said we got the greatest baseball player I've ever seen with my eyes. It's not the case. We're getting long-winded here, though. This is an MLB playoff discussion. This is an extended conversation, more detailed conversation than we had 2 weeks ago, where we kind of filled out the bracket from our predictions. Just to recap, you like the Blue Jays in the wild card. Who is your team out from the AL West?
I have the Astros winning, and I have the Mariners making it, and I have the Rangers on the outside looking in. I think we should revisit this next week and see how wrong I am and how wrong we are.
I mean, I'm glad we could at least sit here and talk it through. And if this is a valuable exercise, but like hopefully it's valuable for people following. I'm like as dialed into these playoffs and the narratives I've ever been, and I've been following baseball for I'm 36, so I guess you could say
30 years.
Yeah, like as soon as you figure out what a box score is,
yeah, of course.
Like, hey, Dad, what's going on over there? Hand it over. I'm very excited for playoff coverage. I also want to just take this moment to thank everybody that's followed the show over the last couple months. especially as we're trying to, figure out our groove in the new Barstool and everything. The baseball coverage means a lot to me. Obviously means a lot to Klemmer. I'm happy to do this. We love doing this. Love talking baseball. Love getting in the playoff mix. Very excited to see what comes out of this season because this is the closest I've followed a major league season to date, particularly from the other 29 teams. So I could be biased in saying this, but I think this is the most interesting baseball season. Take out the Cubs.
Right.
Most interesting baseball season I've paid attention to since those Red Sox Yankees days in the early 2000s when it was just fucking hell on earth out in the AL East. That's how I feel about this season. I think it's an amazing season, and I have extremely high expectations for the playoffs.
It's fun. I don't ever remember a time, maybe 86, 87, if you look at some of the rosters, we had this many exciting young players coming up all at once. And I talk about Ellie De La Cruz, how he has kind of stumbled, but his introduction to the major leagues was sensational. And you never know when that talent's going to break out and he's going to have some crazy triple to win the wild card for the Reds. It could happen. I mean, they're right there. A lot of teams are right there.
Well said, brother. And a good show. It's always a pleasure talking baseball to you. Who do the Jets have this week?
Patriots.
Okay.
Whoever wins that game, whoever loses that game is fucked. The Pats will be 0-3. The Jets will be 1-2 with a really tough schedule coming up. So whoever wins that game whoever loses that game is really fucked.
Yeah, Bears are fine. They're in Kansas City this week, 0-2. So just fingers crossed. 12 wins is around the corner. Maybe one of these days. Until next time, guys, this is Barstool Baseball. Carl here. Thank you very much to Klemmer for joining the show. Guys, subscribe where you find it. We appreciate it on YouTube, but we don't discriminate. Wherever you get the podcast, please subscribe. We are going to be back on Friday. Until then, we'll see you guys.